Welcome to my YouTube channel once again, and this is part 2 of our beginner's guide to using Blender. So I talked about scaling and rotating on our last tutorial. So continuation from where we stopped at duplicating an object. So today I will delete these two objects, and I will show us how to add an object. So before we add an object into our Blender scene, I will show you how to navigate around the front view and the right view, the top view and the back view. So we are in our Blender now. So let's say Shift A to add an object first. Shift A, that's the shortcut key to add an object. Or you can come to this place that we have add and click on add and go to mesh and say let's bring in a cylinder. So we have a cylinder in our scene now. So now I want to go to the front view. So on your number pad keyboard, so you can press 1 on your number pad, 1. So it says front orthographic view. If you press 3 on your keyboard, we have gone to the right orthographic view. So if I press 7, we are top orthographic view for 7. And if I press 3, we are back at right. So to go to left is Ctrl 3 for left orthographic view, Ctrl 3. For front view, 1. For back view, Ctrl 1. So now we are in back view. For top view, 7. For the bottom view, Ctrl 7. So it's pretty simple, and you can just interchange them, or you can come to this place here, and if you click on any of these circles here, so now we have switched to the left view, click on it again, back view again, right view again, front view. This one up here is for the top view and for the back view. So that is pretty how to go around your views of your choice. So now let's rotate our screen and go back to the perspective view. So in our perspective view, so we want to rename this object. So in our outline explorer, our scene explorer, it's saying cylinder. So I want to name it a let me say a bucket. So this is where we can rename. We can select it here too also and click F2 on our keyboard. So it says object name. I can name it a bucket. I can say a bucket and say enter. So now it's now a bucket. So this is where how to rename an object. You click F2, select that object, click F2, and we can call it anything. We can say my cylinder. You can say my cylinder and say enter. So we can change the name if we choose to. So we can name it anything we want. So F2, that's the command to rename an object. So now, like I said, duplicate an object. Okay, let's duplicate an object and see how we can select multiple objects. So like I said, Shift D to duplicate, Shift D to duplicate, and let's push and release and push in this way. So okay, as for this is our cursor. We can move our cursor to different positions by holding Shift and right clicking. If you hold Shift and right click, you see that you can move your cursor to different positions in your 3D window. This means that if I move my cursor to this point, if I'm creating a new object, if I'm adding a new object to this scene, is that this object will come to where my 3D cursor is. So now let me move my 3D cursor to this place, hold Shift and right click on that point of your view, and let's say Shift A to add an object. Shift A, go to mesh, click on mesh, and let's bring in a cube. And now you see that this cube comes to rest at where my cursor is. I can bring my cursor here again, Shift, hold Shift and bring your cursor to this point and right click on this point, and let's say Shift A again. Let's bring in a UV sphere. Okay, yes. Now let's bring our cursor here again, Shift and right click here, and let's say Shift A again to add an object. click on mesh. Now let's bring in a cone. So now we have about 1 2 3 4 5 objects on our scene. And what I want to show you is how to select multiple objects. How to select, because we use left click to select, and to select more than one object you hold shift. To select more than one object you hold shift. Okay, hold shift to select more than one object. Now we can come to our move tool and we can move, or we can use G to move. So we can also scale S, all objects together. We can rescale and scale. So to select more than one object, I said you hold shift and you left click on them, and now you have selected more than one object. Now let's select all and delete them. Let's select all, hold shift, select all, and on your keyboard you press delete to delete all objects. Now, so what I want to show you now is the edit mode. Another thing you should know in Blender is edit mode. Okay, now let me show you how to bring this cursor to the center point of origin. So you do Shift S on your keyboard and it says cursor to world. So click on cursor to world, and you see now our cursor has come back to world, to that center point of origin. That means if I create any object or add any object, it will come to that center point of origin. Okay, now I'll take us now to another phase, which is edit mode. Edit mode. Okay, now first of all, let's bring in an object. Shift A, and let's say mesh, and let's say torus. Now we bring in an torus, and now we can come to this add torus and click on this menu. This helps us to be able to do some tweaking here. We can reduce our major segments, let's say to 23, minor segments, let's say to 7. We can say major radius, that means the outer, you can use say minor, and let's push it to 0.33 or 0.34. Now let's click outside. So now we have something like this. This is a torus, and if you can see faint edges. You can see some edges here that are faint on our object, including our cube that we brought in first. But now I want to see our edges properly and clearly. So I'll come to this point where we have overlays. Highlight it. It says overlays. I will click on that arrow coming facing down. Now it shows us a menu that says viewport overlays. I will come to geometry and activate wireframe. And what you see now is that our torus is clearly seen, our edges is very sharp, and we can see our edge loops around this torus. So now let's go to edit mode. So to go to edit mode is very simple. On your keyboard you can press tab. That's the shortcut key for edit mode. Tab on your keyboard, and you see this kind of orange highlights on this torus. So to go back to our object mode, you see the same key by pressing tab. So now we are in our object mode, and there are two ways of doing that. You can come to this place that we have object mode while selecting our torus. So come to this object mode, click on this arrow downwards and come to edit mode and say edit mode, and now we are in edit mode. So I'll be explaining edit mode now. And so in edit mode we have 3 modes inside edit mode. We have our vertex selection mode, we have our edge selection mode, and face selection mode. So now let me explain vertices. What are vertices? Vertices are points in our object. They are points connected to form an object. So this is a vertex, this is a vertex, this is also a vertex, and we can select more than one vertices by holding shift down, and we can select more than one vertices. We can select more than one vertices, and we can select vertices in a loop. So if I hold Alt down and select one vertex, I've selected a vectors in this loop. So if I hold Alt again and select one vertices, I've selected vertices in another loop. Still the same thing. If I hold Alt and select this loop, I've selected vertices in this loop. So if I hold Alt and select one vertices here, if I select this edge here and while holding Alt, I've selected vertices in this loop also. So that's vectors. You can also move a vectors. If I select one vectors, come to our move tool, so I can drag it, or I can press G to drag. So you can move one vectors, but you cannot scale one vectors and you cannot rotate one vectors. You can only scale two vectors. So if I select these two vectors by holding Shift and I say S to scale, so now I can scale these two vectors. So I can scale three vectors. I can scale all the vectors in this loop. If I hold Alt down and select one vectors and I say S, that means I can scale all the vectors in this loop. So Ctrl Z. So now let me talk about the edge selection. This second one here is called the edge selection. Edge selection. 2 on your keyboard is for edge selection. For edge selection. So 2 on your keyboard is for edge selection. Edge selection. Edge selection. 2 on your keyboard is for edge selection. And now, so this is edge selection. Edge selection. Edge selection. So we can select edge. We can select edge in this loop. Hold Alt and select one edge. Now we have selected edge in this loop. So we can do that here too. Hold Alt. We can select edge in this loop. So if I come here and hold Alt also on this loop here, I've selected edge rounding this loop. Rounding this loop. So these are edges. So to select multiple edges, you hold Shift, like I said, to select multiple edges. Now let's go to face. So also too, you can still move your edge. You can move your edge. You can scale 2 edges. You can scale more than 2 edges, 4 edges, but you can't scale 1 edge. Okay, yes, you can scale 1 edge. Sorry for that. You can scale 1 edge, and you can also rotate 1 edge, but you can't scale 1 vertices. Now let's go to face selection. So on your keyboard, if you press 3, is for face selection. On your keyboard, 3 is for face selection. So you can select multiple faces by holding down Shift. Holding down Shift to select multiple faces. So if you hold Alt, you will select faces in the loop. So if I hold Alt and select this face now, I'll select faces in this loop. If I hold Alt and select this face, I'll select faces inside this loop. So that's how to select with face selection, and how to select from one point to another point. And so you hold Control. Watch this. I select this face and hold Control, and I clicked on this face. So see, so look at what it does. So now if I hold Control again and select this face, so now it selects all the faces in this region. If I hold Control again and select to this point, so it selects all the faces in between. So if I rotate my screen and I select this face, so it selects all the faces in this line, and I can select here too and select all the faces in this line also too. So that's for face selection. And what I want to show us next is what we call extrusion, and that will be on part 3. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and follow on Twitter, on Telegram, on Instagram, and on Facebook also. Thanks for watching this tutorial. If it has helped you, please don't forget to like. Thanks.